Hey YouTube, we are back again this week for another video portion of the Daly Dose Sports Podcast. Hopefully you're enjoying these videos each and every week. I hope everyone out there is doing well. Hope you're all staying healthy. This week on the Daly Dose YouTube video, we are talking about some of the things that we learned over the weekend since major sports are now starting to return. So let's go ahead and jump into a few things that we have learned recently. So we are finally getting some sports back, at least on some level. For the first time since the month of March, the NBA, the NHL, and Major League Baseball are all back out and playing again. Not to mention sports like boxing, MMA, NASCAR, just auto racing in general. A number of soccer leagues are going. But as we watch the first full weekend in sports and the past week that we've kind of been keeping an eye on these things, we learned a number of things from watching. And I'll be very honest with you, I watched a lot. Like I spent a lot of time in front of the TV because we finally had something to watch. But today on The Dose, let's talk about some of the things we learned when we dig a little bit deeper and we think about some of these things. There's a number of things that you can learn. You know, we talked last week about some of the negativity that we've been hearing over the past few months, specifically from the sports media world. And you know, with sports now coming back, we actually have seen more of it this past week. We learned that positive virus tests are scaring the crap out of most everyone. But it's especially, apparently, scaring those in the sports media world the most. Because as soon as we start to get news on positive tests, we start to hear the sports media world screaming and just running for the hills. They've been doing that a lot lately. You know, a number of people in the sports media world are saying things like, you know, sports just may never come back. And you know what? I don't even care if they ever do or not. We've heard a lot of that over the past few months. But here's the thing I want you to keep in mind. Because I'm sure that if you're listening to any sports talk, or if you're listening to any sports media whatsoever, you're probably hearing those kind of things. They should just shut it down. They can just shut it down for good. I don't even care if it ever comes back. They just need to shut down sports until things are safe. Why in the world should sports ever return? If you're listening to sports media, you're probably hearing some of those things. Here's the thing I want you to keep in mind when you hear sports media say that. They might be being a little less than honest with you. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. See, a lot of sports media people, they love to take that divisive argument. We hear them say things like that all the time. We'll hear the sports media world say things like, you know, I actually think LeBron James is probably a better player than Michael Jordan ever was. Okay. We will hear the sports media world say, you know, Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes, he is already the greatest quarterback of all time. Really? We will hear them say the 2017 Golden State Warriors are easily the greatest basketball team of all time. We hear these same people literally giving us these dumb sports takes all the time, and we just kind of pass it off as they're just kind of stupid, or I don't agree with it, or you have nothing to back that up with whatsoever. Why are you just talking about dumb things? Here's the question that I have. When they say those things, or when they say this now, they just need to shut down sports, do they really believe those hot takes that they're coming out with? Probably not. When they say sports can never return, do they really think sports are going away, never to return? Again, probably not. Here is the test for me. Here is the test. You kind of keep this in the back of your mind. Are those sports media people right now preparing for their careers when sports never comes back? Are they touching up those resumes? Are they calling around, making some phone calls? Hey, I got to find a job. Are they looking for completely new careers? Because if not, they're probably lying. See, their actions speak much louder than their words do. Let me give you a little bit of an example. We talked a little bit earlier in the dose, if you go listen to the full podcast, we talked a little bit about Hitler and about Germany back in the 30s. And back in the 30s, when Hitler was coming to power in Germany, there were a number of people in the Jewish or Romanian or Polish community that were living in Germany who saw his rise, and being afraid of what it might mean to them and their families, they began to flee. They began to leave. They began to move away. There was a huge exodus of people out of Germany. They were trying to get away as quickly as possible. They didn't just say they were afraid. They were genuinely afraid. So they left. Do you see what I'm saying here? When sports writers say they are afraid, but then they keep writing sports articles and doing sports shows and collecting sports paychecks, I kind of have to call BS on the nonsense that they're saying, because if they really believed sports were leaving and they were never coming back, they would be making career plans to move forward. They're not doing that. Now, I don't think that's the only thing, though. I don't think it's just that. I know from my days when I was coaching basketball, I know this. It is far easier to point out flaws than to provide real, actual solutions. So they go out and they point out a lot of flaws. Hey, there are positive tests. There could be more tests. This could all go sideways. And there are a lot of trip falls here for these athletes and these coaches and all of sports. Yes, we know that. We realize that. How about this, sports media world? How about you try coming up with solutions instead of pointing out all the problems? We understand there are problems out there. Blind people can see there are problems out there. The bulk of the sports media world has been highly disappointing throughout this pandemic, and we saw again over this past week. As soon as we start to hear about positive tests, they're like, we have to shut this all down. Okay, until when? Until when? Someone give me an answer. Until when? Until it's completely gone? Who knows when that will be? Until there's a vaccine. How many people won't go get like a flu shot? You're telling me as soon as a vaccine comes out, it's all going to be fixed? You're talking about 2025, 2027, 2030. Then we can bring back sports? No, I don't think so. You're going to have some trip falls. You're going to have some setbacks. And we have to survive and push through them. And when I hear the sports media world talking about how we just got to shut it down, I kind of have to think, some of them are just trying to stir the pot and get us stirred up and try to get us angry and try to get us to call in because they don't have anything else to do. I'm not sure I believe all of it. I think a lot of the sports media world is making some things up to try to tick some people off. Let's jump into Major League Baseball, though, because we learned this past week that Major League Baseball, they really love the Houston Astros. Last week, Los Angeles Dodgers reliever Joe Kelly was handed an 8-game suspension by Major League Baseball for his role in a benches clearing incident that occurred in Houston last week. Now, no punches were even thrown. But Dodgers manager Dave Roberts was issued a 1-game suspension, and Houston Astros manager Dusty Baker was fined an undisclosed amount of money. But Kelly, who threw a fastball behind Alex Bregman's head, keep in mind, didn't hit him, just threw it behind him, and later taunted Carlos Correa on the way back to the dugout, he's going to have to appeal his suspension, but he got suspended for 8 games. That's the equivalent of like 22 games in this shortened season. I mean, MLB came down hard on him. So let me see if I have this straight. Kelly got suspended more games than all of the cheating Houston Astros did combined. We know they were cheating. Do you know what the difference is between like first-degree murder and second-degree murder? I'm pretty sure it's whether or not you planned on doing it. I don't think he planned on doing this. I'm pretty positive the Houston Astros planned all of their cheating. There is something to that, isn't there? It's a little bit weird. I mean, Major League Baseball, make sure that you take care of those Houston Astros, though. Because, man, you can't have a World Series champion being called out by the league themselves and saying, you know what, they definitely cheated. We know they cheated. They planned to cheat, and they carried it out. They're just trying to dust everything under the rug. And if anyone even comes up against the Houston Astros and challenges them, Major League Baseball is going to stomp on them. If Joe Kelly didn't want to be suspended, he should have just blatantly cheated. Because then, according to Major League Baseball, I think he would have been just fine. I'll tell you one other thing that I learned this weekend from Major League Baseball. Here at the Daly Dose, we actually give Major League Baseball a lot of grief. We have given that sport a hard time about it being way too slow. We make fun of it for being way too boring. They refuse to speed up the game in any way. There's just not enough action, and I struggle to watch Major League Baseball. But I learned something this weekend. Now, with baseball back, and it's completely stripped down. There's no fans. It is just purely about the sport of baseball itself. I learned something really important. Baseball is too slow. It's so boring. There's genuinely not enough action, and they refuse to speed up the game in any way whatsoever. Hey, I love the fact that Major League Baseball is back. I really, really do. But man, that is a tough watch. It is a snooze fest to watch Major League Baseball. If you can stay interested for 9 innings, honestly, you deserve serious credit. You know what? Forget that. If you can stay awake for 9 innings, you deserve like a medal, because I learned that this weekend. Man, Major League Baseball is way too slow and it is way too boring. Okay, YouTube, make sure that you go over and you check out the rest of the podcast. I'll leave a link here down in the comments on YouTube. This week on the show, we're looking at a number of other things that we have learned from sports over the past week. Since it has restarted, we've learned a number of things. The NBA is back. There are a number of things that we're learning from the NBA, and I'll tell you this right now, it's not all good. Plus, we have some college football things we learned. We have some sports news to talk. We have an NFL-flavored Daly Dose Top 5 you are not going to want to miss, so make sure that you go check out the full podcast. Hope everyone out there is doing well. Have a great week, everybody. I'll see you all next Wednesday.